Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Hello and welcome inside yet another edition, the Bmore Baseball Podcast. He is the 14-year MLB veteran. He's in the Orioles Hall of Fame. His name is Mike Bordick. I've just been covering the team for a while. My name is Jerry Coleman. We're producing brand new content every day on our X page, our Instagram page, and our Facebook page, all at one address. It's Bmore Sports Pod. That's Bmore Sports Pod. And you can always watch us on YouTube or with our partners at BaltimoreSun.com. Episode 11 is just ahead. We're going to be joined by ESPN's Hall of Fame writer, Tim Kurkjian, but we're old enough to remember him when he covered the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. Mike and I will also provide our thoughts on the salary cap and the owners and the players coming together, sort of. We'll see. And playing catch with a kid mid-game. How far can you take that? We found out at Camden Yards just about a week ago. But first, let's bring in our featured guests. All our guests are brought to you by Science and Kirk. Injured in an accident, you've got to call Science and Kirk. If you have a phone, you have a lawyer. Call 1-800-LAWYERS or visit youhavealawyer.com. Tim, thanks for taking the time being here. And like I said in the opening, we're old enough to remember you being a member of the Baltimore Sun covering the Orioles. The younger generation may not recall that because you've been at ESPN for almost eternity. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished there. But as I look at you and I watch you and I see the background, there's still a soft spot. Even though you cover all of Major League Baseball, there's still got to be a little bit of a soft spot for them O's.
Well, yeah, I kind of grew up watching them, but I'm so old. I actually grew up watching the Washington Senators, who got their brains beat out every time they played the Orioles. So as a little kid, I hated the Orioles because my team always got pounded by the team 50 miles away. So, but yes, it's my home state. I've lived here most of my life. They're the Orioles. You know, any team that has Brooks and Frank Robinson and Jim Palmer and the rest of these guys, you got to count me in on some level. I can't root for them. I'm not rooting for anyone, but they're the Orioles. I grew up here. All good.
Why were the Senators then your team? Why not the Orioles at a young age?
Well, I was more of a Washington suburb than the Orioles.
Okay.
So I was 50 miles from Baltimore. Mike, you haven't lived here your whole life like I have.
Right,
and if you live in Bethesda, Maryland, you are a Washington suburb and you're not even close to Baltimore. In fact, when I went to the University of Maryland, I had never eaten a crab cake before. And I had never seen the game of lacrosse ever played. But once you cross the Howard County line, Jerry knows this very well, everyone plays lacrosse and everyone eats crab cakes. But south of it, where I grew up, we had a different look at things, and we loved the Senators, however terrible they were, not the Orioles.
That's great.
How much do you think this team in D.C. has impacted the Orioles over the years? You know, it was the biggest fear of Peter Angelos before he got rid of the team.
Yeah, you know, I'm really surprised, fellas, how this dynamic has worked. Mike, as you know, Jerry, as you know, if you're a Yankee fan or Met fan, you hate the other team. White Sox, Cubs, they hate the other teams. But even right here in my neighborhood in Gaithersburg, Maryland, there are households that have Orioles fans and Nationals fans, and they all seem to get along. Stupid me, I just assumed when the Nationals came back here from Montreal that all the people in the Washington area would become Nationals fans. But what I found out is they are not as provincial as me. They're not as old as me. They don't even remember the Senators. So a lot of people that switched to the Orioles after the Senators left or whatever, they're still Oriole fans. And I think it's very, very healthy, even in an area of this size, that you can have Orioles fans and Nationals fans living in the same house.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, okay, on to some new players now. I mean, the new Orioles, you know, it seems like they're starting to get back on the right track. But I think my point here is not just the Orioles, but is this parity in baseball, or are we seeing some bad baseball right now, especially in the American League? I mean, you've seen baseball for generations now. It just seems like a little sloppier brand. Some of these teams are starting to come out of it, but man, throughout the American League right now, a lot of sub 500 teams.
Yeah, and until recently, when the Mariners got healthy, we had a situation where there was a chance that every team in the American League was going to be under 500 and have a negative run differential other than the Yankees and the Rays. Now, since then, the Mariners have won 8 in a row. The Guardians are starting to move. But, Mike, your point is well made. The difference between the National League and the American League, at least as of 2 weeks ago, was a dramatic difference. I mean, I did a game last night in Philadelphia, Padres and Phillies, and both those teams are going to be struggling to make the playoffs, and they're well above 500. They're pretty good teams right now, where the American League is different. And that's why, despite the Orioles' struggles, they've been outscored by 36 runs, all that, they're still only one game out of the third wild card spot. So you just can't give up on almost any team in the American League because it is so ordinary right now, and it may stay that way. If you can be 500 in the middle of August, you're going to have a chance to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that's good, but I think that's realism today.
And what about the key? Oh, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
The key is the health and wellness of these teams, right? I mean, my gosh, in just the American League East, the starting rotations have been decimated with injuries.
Yeah, the injuries have been like nothing I've ever seen in the last 5 or 6 years. We now have 3 leagues now. We have the AL, we have the NL, and we have the IL because there's so many guys who are hurt. If you look at that great start by the Atlanta Braves, after like 45 games, 7 of their players had played 42 or more games. That's one reason they got off to the great start. They were the only team with a healthy everyday lineup. And Mike, you can speak to this because you were one of the toughest guys who ever played. But the more we try to protect our players, the more they get hurt. It's like a paradox. If we protect them, giving them healthy scratches and taking care of them in every way, you can't throw more than 90 pitches. They should stay healthier, but they don't. So I'm not sure what's going on. I just know it's not great for the game when our best players go look at the IL All-Star team right now. It's unbelievable. You can put together one of the best teams in baseball just on guys who are on the injured list.
How about the overall state of the game? How would you assess it, Tim? Because you work at ESPN, where it seems like football is king. And growing up, I mean, in October, that belonged to baseball. The month of October, it was all about the World Series and the playoffs. And nowadays, we get the NFL force-fed to us 12 months out of the year. How do you deal with that as a baseball guy? And how do you view the way baseball is in the whole sports hierarchy these days compared to when we were a little bit younger?
Well, when I was a bit younger, but baseball was king. When I was a little kid, there was not a close second. But clearly now football is king in this country. Basketball is second, and at certain places, hockey's third and baseball is fourth, which is really sad. Because let's face it, boys, the World Series was tremendous. October was tremendous. The World Baseball Classic was tremendous. The number of good, young, everyday players that we see, the pitching that we see today is all tremendous. But until we solve the problem of the whole 3 true outcomes, too many walks, too many strikeouts, too many homers, we're not going to return the game to where I believe it needs to be. Fellas, I'm almost 70 years old. I covered the game in the 80s, and I'm telling you, the game was played better in the 80s than it is today. The players are bigger, stronger, faster than ever. But the understanding of the game today just is not there. And it's not even the fault of the players. It's the fault of the industry that has taught guys all we care about is your exit velocity. Dusty Baker once told me recently, I don't care about exit velocity. I care about exit hits. All we care about is how hard you throw it, how fast you can spin it, instead of how many guys are you getting out. That's what I think needs to happen here, is we need to recognize the ball and play needs to happen a whole lot more. Look, I don't know how anyone gets a hit anymore with the stuff that we see. But Mike, you're the first one that would know if you're overmatched on a certain night against Jacob Mizorowski, then the hitter, it's his obligation now to make an adjustment, saying, this guy's better than I am. What am I going to do to make a productive out or put a ball in play. Am I wrong about this?
No, amen to that. That's when hit and runs came into play, right? You got a tough pitcher, you shorten up, maybe show a little butcher boy or something like that. That's the only reason I got to break into the big leagues with Tony La Russa. He put me in those kind of situations. And I think that brand of baseball wins today. You mentioned that era of the 80s baseball, and I think every era has its thing. I want to know, though, you've seen so much baseball in your life. Is there an era that you wish you could go back to and either cover again or cover for the first time? And I'm talking through its whole history of the game.
Well, I went to Walter Johnson High School in Bethesda, Maryland, named after the greatest pitcher of all time. And I would love to go back to 1920 and see what Babe Ruth was really like in person. Yeah. I would really like to go back to 1920 and see how hard Walter Johnson threw. I think we would find out they were way better than we think they are today. Not statistically, but they threw harder and they hit it farther and harder than we think that they did. So I would like to go all the way back and take the greatest player of all time, in my mind, Babe Ruth, and pit him against the greatest pitcher of all time, Walter Johnson, and just see what that would have looked like. I think it would be a lot more competitive and athletic than people give it credit for. If I hear one more time that Babe Ruth is some big fat guy, some big fat unathletic fat guy, fellas, he hit 136 triples. He stole 123 bases. He was the best pitcher in the American League when he decided to go become a hitter and then became the greatest hitter ever. Mike, he was a great basketball player when he was a kid because he had great feet and great hand-eye. So please, wow. I go way back too far. And yet Kurt Schilling, my friend, told me once, he said, Matt Stairs was way better than Babe Ruth. If Matt Stairs was way better than Babe Ruth, I have wasted the last 50 years of my life.
Sure have.
I played with Matt Stairs, and I will say this. I'm sure he had as good a time as Babe Ruth had in the big leagues. Matt Stairs was great.
And I love Matt Stairs. He was one of the great professional hitters ever. I'm just saying, he didn't pitch, and he didn't steal 136 bases either.
Well, speaking of the Babe, it reminds me in today's society, we're so quick to declare someone the greatest of all time, even before their career is over. Now, Shohei Ohtani seems to be on that path. Wondering your thoughts on the way he has become not just a hitter, but a pitcher at a very high level. And is it fair to make those comparisons to the Babe?
Yes, it is. But again, the difference is Babe Ruth did it for 20 years and Shohei has done it for 9 years now, which is stunning. He's the most remarkable player I have ever seen. He can't be the greatest because I still think Babe Ruth is the greatest because he did it for so much longer. But the difference is Babe wasn't throwing 100 miles an hour. He threw harder than people think, but he didn't throw 100. And he wasn't facing pitches at 100 miles an hour as often as Ohtani is. And even though he hit the ball way harder than people understand, I don't think it was 117 off the bat like Ohtani seems to do all the time. But as I, again, go way back in time, I really believe if Babe Ruth if there was a DH in 1920 in the American League, Babe Ruth would have won 20 games and hit 50 homers. So the comparisons are hard to make because the DH changes everything, but I've never seen anybody like Shohei, and I'm not sure we're going to see anybody like him again. He is a baseball machine. Every movement he makes is surgical. Every swing he takes, every throw, every step he takes is designed to make him the best player that most people have ever seen.
It's pretty amazing. You know what I would love to do is take this era of player, the greatest athletes, and give them Babe Ruth's bat and the baseball they used back then and see if they could do the same thing that they're doing today. I think just bringing the ball back would change the game incredibly.
Right. The ball that Babe Ruth used was a kind of a squishy, soft ball. Imagine with all the technology of today, with a baseball basically looking like a Titleist these days. Right. The ball just flies. So that's why I always give Babe. Now, Babe Ruth isn't going to use a 40-ounce bat today trying to get a hit off of Paul Skeens. We understand that. My point is these great guys even the guys of the 80s, let's say, would get there and say, wow, I've never seen a slider quite like that. I've never seen velocity quite like that before. But the great hitters of the time that I grew up watching, whether it was Cal Ripken, George Brett, Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Alan Trammell, they would all recognize, all right, this is new stuff. I got to find a way to defeat this. I'm not going to strike out 180 times this year. And those great players who were the best ever at making adjustments would figure it out. Molitor told me, Mike, once that he faced Pedro Martinez in his prime. And Molitor's towards the end of his career. And even though he was still a great hitter, he said, this guy's better than me. I can't hit him. I have to change my approach. So he went in saying, first strike I see, I'm going to swing, because if I get behind in the count, he's got 3 pitches he can strike me out with. That's what I believe we need more of today.
Tim, I wanted to ask you about Camden Yards, which has been renovated since the last year, and how it stacks up. I mean, you've been to all the ballparks. Does it still stack up among the best around Major League Baseball? And one other thing I have to add, I and you probably have known this, I probably forgot about it, but I was roaming through the outfield during the last homestand, and I come across an area called Eli Jacobs Plaza. And I'm thinking to myself, why would Eli Jacobs' name be plastered on Camden Yards? Edward Bennett Williams is more responsible for this ballpark than any owner. And maybe Angelos' name belongs out here instead of Eli Jacobs. I was informed he owned the team when it was, named Camden Yards. I don't have many memories, great or indifferent, about Eli Jacobs. But what about the way Camden Yards stacks up? And maybe you have an Eli Jacobs memory.
Well, I don't have a great Eli Jacobs memory, sorry, and I don't think I've ever seen the Eli Jacobs Plaza. Sorry, not to insult anyone. As for Camden Yards, look, at being an old man like I am and loving the history of the game, Fenway will always be my favorite. Wrigley Field is my second favorite, but among the new ballparks, and that's the ones built in the last 30, 35 years, Camden Yards is still number one for me, because it started the process of smaller, cozier, older type looking ballparks, downtown ballparks. So it's the third greatest one in the game today for me, followed closely by Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Seattle, some really great ballparks out there. But I'll never forget that when the Sky Dome opened, I was standing on the field, like it was like the first week of the Sky Dome opening, and Larry Lucchino, then the president of the Orioles, and I was on the field with me, and he looked around the Sky Dome and he said, wow, they've just built the 8th wonder of the world, and we're just building this cute little ballpark in Baltimore. Well, that cute little ballpark in Baltimore set a trend for all these other parks, which makes it such an important ballpark and one of the best I've ever watched a game in.
Hey, Tim, just wanted to ask about the collective bargaining agreement and the potential work stoppage. We all went through the 94-95 campaign and how horrible and frustrating that was, and the government had to get it back going. Your thoughts on this year?
Well, I'm so old, I went through the 81 strike. That was 45 years ago, and we're still talking about similar things we talked about 45 years ago. I am not encouraged. I am an optimist by nature, but where we are right now is not a very good place. In spring training, someone who would know told me he has never seen the two sides this far apart with a deadline this close. Now, granted, the deadline at the time was 10 months away, but still a lot has to be done. And now we've got, proposals out and things like that, which I guess is relatively good news, but it is clear they are really, really far apart right now. And I just hope everyone recognizes how much money is to be lost by the players if there is no baseball next year. More important, how much money is to be lost by the owners if there is no baseball next year? And we talked about the momentum, fellas. People are back into baseball because of last October, the World Baseball Classic, and the crazy start to this season. To shut this down after this season would be obviously a ridiculously terrible mistake. So let's hope that cooler heads prevail and somehow this is going to get done. But I must say, at the moment, I just can't see a clear path to getting this done, and that discourages me beyond words.
Yeah, we all can not stand another third work stoppage in our lifetime. That's unfathomable. Think about that. Last thing I wanted to ask you before we move on, because we're going to talk about this next segment, playing catch with the fans. We saw Jesus Sanchez of the Blue Jays be hit inadvertently by some ball that was thrown out of the stands when I guess a fan thought he was playing catch with the player. I'm not understanding when this all began. I know it, I've seen clips of it, Tim, where Aaron Judge maybe will have a catch with a fan before an inning starts, or Mike Trout before the game, never mid-game though.
Yeah, I'm not, as Mike can attest, things have changed an awful lot in baseball. We go hug the second baseman when we hit a double, and we tap everyone's shin guards when we get to the plate, even though we've been in the big leagues for 1 week. It's a different game now, and we play catch with the fans, which I love. Anything that can get the fans more involved in the game and get the players to recognize how important the fans are to this, I'm all for that. But there has to be a point where we say we can't throw a ball at a player and have him leave the game because he got hit by a ball thrown from the stand. So I'm all for keeping everyone engaged here, but there is still a limit to these things. And the next time I see a guy raising the roof, running around the bases after hitting a home run to make the score 13-1, I'm not sure that's the way to go about things. Because in Mike's day, if you did that, either you or someone else on your team got flipped the next at bat. Humility,
Tim. I forget. I thought baseball was supposed to teach that.
Right. We have lost our humility in the game. And again, that makes me a fun hater, which I'm not. I just think there's a time and a place for everything. And let's just be cautious about when we use it, because it can be used against you. You piss off the other team, which we were always taught, never do that. Don't give them a reason to hate you even more. Just go play the game the right way. Be Scott Rowland, put your head down and run around the bases, especially if it's 13-1.
Yeah. Amen to that. Amen to that, Tim. Hey, thanks for the time. And we're really enjoying the podcast you and your son are doing as you've entered a new genre, podcasting.
Well, thank you. We're in our third year. My son, Jeff, is a polished radio guy. He knows a lot about baseball, but he doesn't know a lot compared to me, which is good because I only know about baseball, basketball, and sitcoms from the 60s. He knows everything else. He knows pop culture and music. So we're a good team. He knows all the things that I don't know, which is almost everything. And now I can still tell him a baseball story, and he hasn't heard it before, and he has a genuine organic reaction, which is what we're looking for here. So thank you for that, Jerry. Great fun. Is this a great game or what?
Yeah, one of the great father-son tandem podcasts in the business for sure. Tim, be well, and catch up with you at the ballpark soon.
Okay, thanks, see you soon.
To help explain how much fun I have playing Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, I brought in a ballpark vendor.
Hot dogs, hot dogs!
I love having the chance to win cash or to be selected as a contestant of the game. During that game, I can win $500 for every Orioles home run. So grab the
popcorn, get your popcorn.
Plus, I can win $5,000 for a grand slam. So when the Orioles are hitting homers, things can get pretty nuts. Make the right call this season and play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery.
Here's something the car insurance companies don't want you to know. If you've been injured in a car accident, the insurance companies are already working against you. They have a team full of agents whose job is to give you as little as possible. That's why you need an experienced lawyer. Science & Kirk has been fighting for accident victims for over 50 years. They know how to handle the insurance companies and know how to get you maximum compensation. Don't go it alone. Remember, you have a lawyer. Call Science & Kirk today or visit youhavealawyer.com.
Shop Maryland's largest adult use and medical cannabis menu located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week, only at Relief Shop.
Hey Oriole fans, it's Oriole Hall of Famer Mike Bordick here. During my 14 years in the big leagues and over 1,700 games, I put a lot of miles on my body. Listen, I used to judge my days by how I'd walk down the stairs. Now I don't even think about it. I'm almost 60 years old and my legs have never felt better. That's why I trust the Good Feet Arch Supports. They've made a real difference in keeping me active, whether I'm coaching, staying involved in the game that I love, or just enjoying pain-free life here in Baltimore. Thanks to the Good Feet store, I'm still in the game. Visit the Good Feet store today for a free fitting and test walk. take the first step toward a pain-free life.
Cravings can strike at any time, and Royal Farms is ready to fuel your mornings with fresh brewed coffee, paired with protein-packed breakfast sandwiches and a side of those crispy hash browns. And when the midday hunger hits, bite into a world-famous chicken sub, loaded with flavor and leveled up with a side of Western fries. And when it's time to bring home a crowd pleaser, don't miss out on our world-famous chicken meals, hand-breaded and a hit with the whole family. Whenever you crave, Royal Farms is ready.
Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time. Looking for a great place to watch the game, bet the races, and get in on the action without heading to the big city? Head to Greenmount OTB in Hampstead, where the action is always on. Watch every game and race on more than 40 big screen TVs while wagering on live horse racing or the big game at the Bet Park Sportsbook. You can bet at the window, at a kiosk, or right from your phone with the Bet Parks mobile app. And grab great food from Greenmount Station, home of Maryland's best crab cakes. Then keep the fun going next door at Greenmount Bowl. Greenmount OTB. Big time action in a hometown setting. 21 and over only. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We move on to For the Birds, which is always sponsored by the Maryland Lottery. Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery. You could win instantly or win cash for Orioles home runs as a contestant of the game. As always, please play responsibly. All right, we just talked about it with Tim. Fan hits a player with a ball thrown from the stands. It was an unfortunate situation, a misunderstanding, if you will. Jesus Sanchez, the Blue Jays outfielder, last Sunday was struck by a ball thrown out of the stands. I have a lot of people who think they're doctors, not named Michael Jacobs, people who follow baseball wondering, how could this guy be hurt so bad when guys get drilled by fastballs all the time in the wrist and still stay in the game? So what did you think of the entire episode and the fact that Sanchez was caught off guard?
Yeah, and I think that's why he ended up coming out of the game. I think he was just in shock a little bit, didn't quite expect it. But I saw the video, and I think initially when we saw Sanchez come out of the game, we first think, oh my gosh, this is going back in the day when O'Day's hitting Batista, when Adam Jones is getting drilled. We got the rivalry coming back. Somebody just threw a ball at one of the Blue Jays players. Here we go again. Well, it wasn't that at all. I mean, Sanchez had turned around earlier in that inning and literally put his glove up. And he was probably 20 to 30 feet away from the fence, maybe closer, and was actually provoking a youngster to play a game of catch. Well, the inning was just about to start, and he turned around, and that kid was like, he probably looked at his dad and said, "You think so, Dad?" And Dad was like, "Yeah, he wants to play catch," and he fires it down there. Well, it wasn't really fired. It was lobbed down and hits him on the throwing hand. Next thing you know, the glove comes off, and it's almost like he was hit by a car out there. He was like in shock, didn't know what was happening. And fortunately, it wasn't a broken wrist, but I think it was just a shock of all of a sudden being hit by something, and maybe in his mind not knowing that he had just talked to that kid and knowing that was the kid. He thought it was probably another fan that didn't like the Blue Jays, and there you go. I mean, we saw a similar kind of incident the other day. Not that Basayo was hit by a fan, but he made a swing, and his initial reaction was fear that his shoulder came out of joint or something like that. And next thing you know, he's okay. But he actually walked out, and we all thought, oh, no, here we go. He's going to have surgery on his shoulder. And he was ready to go for his next at-bat. So, you know, I think fear sometimes comes into play. Everybody's worried about their health on the field, especially in fluke things like that.
Yeah, the good news is Basayo was back the next day. Sanchez is already back, you know, as a pinch hitter for the Blue Jays. But Does Major League Baseball need to come up with some sort of rule saying, hey, no more mid-inning catches, you know, or maybe not at the beginning of the inning. Let's just save the catches with the fans for before or after the game.
Yeah, you know, I think before the game might be the best. You know, after the game, the players are gone. If there is going to be some sort of interaction like that. But yeah, not during a game at all. I think it's cool to maybe wave to a fan if you want to go over and talk to somebody. But you can't have the fans thinking they can all of a sudden play catch. I mean, it's dangerous enough. And I just saw a highlight of this when an opposing team hits a home run, the fans a lot of times are firing balls back onto the field. And I saw Aaron Judge, actually, a ball bounced back up and hit him as he was rounding second base on a home run. So, there's risk there as well. So heads up, man. Everybody wear your helmet in a baseball field.
Yeah, that just used to be a rule for Wrigley Field. Now it's become every ballpark seemingly. But there's a lot of acrimonious history between the Blue Jays and the Orioles, as you referenced. I mean, you had fans once throw a beer on Adam Jones. Who was it? Jeff Hoffman blowing kisses to the Orioles after winning a game. Even going back to 93 and Cito Gaston, never putting Mike Mussina in the All-Star game. So you played at Toronto,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that Toronto team. They don't like the Orioles. No, I'm kidding. They're good people up there. My gosh, they don't know anything about baseball rivalries, I don't think, up in Toronto anyway. That's for sure. Maybe that Expos team from back in 94. And I know we're going to be talking about the CBA, but that was one of the teams that got screwed during the strike.
They did. That was the first strike that Tim referred to. And they don't have a hockey team in the Stanley Cup final. And by the way, it's not finals. It's Stanley Cup final for the non-hockey fans out there. So Canada, you can focus on baseball and your one team in the sport, Toronto.
Hockey's USA sport now. You know that, baby. They got the gold medal around their neck. All of them do.
All right, let's move on. It's time for Baltimore and Beyond, brought to you by Relief Shop, Baltimore's best adult use and medical cannabis dispensary. Relief Shop has 700 plus unique menu items, and home delivery is always available for medical patients, courtesy of Relief Shop, Connor Welton and Company, right there on Cathedral Street. They'll take care of you right in the heart of Baltimore City. All right, this talk about a possible work stoppage has really come to the forefront now, as we've heard from really the extremists on both sides. We haven't heard from the moderates, but the extremists on both sides, the owners and the players, they're saying they need a salary cap, payroll disparity. The last time this all came to a head, you referenced it with Tim, was over 30 years ago. Led to the longest work stoppage in MLB history, missed the World Series, the 94-95 season. Do you think we're headed towards that direction, as Tim indicated? Do you think, either side is going to back down, or is just a lot of posturing right now?
No, well, I think it's posturing for sure, but this feels exactly like 94, 95. I mean, because this is what it was all about, the cap. The owners wanting the cap. And I feel like this is going to be the same type of situation, because the players, even though we're stuck on the free agent market and we want to keep it that way, it's always the owners that end up bumping heads. They just can't get an agreement with what they want, because if you remember back in 94, after the strike went and we lost the World Series, and it was, oh my gosh, it was a crazy time. Next thing you know, the replacement players were starting to come out and talking about that, and the owners were going back and forth. That's when the government ended up getting involved. It was a shit show, dude. I mean, it was crazy back then, and I just hope it doesn't get to that point. It seems like teams are really hunkered in right now, though. It seems like they've been talking about this since just a couple years ago, when there was, remember, a lockout just a few years ago, but it didn't last very long, and they kind of settled on a collective bargaining agreement. Well, I think there's been posturing up until this point, and I think this is where the owners feel like they finally have a wedge built in there, and they might be able to break the union, especially with the crap that went on with Tony Clark and the union. He's gone too, so it seems like there was a little turmoil over there. There's so many young guys now in Major League Baseball. You don't get that same veteran presence that was harping on every young guy about keeping the union strong. I don't think you're feeling that anymore. So there might be a little bit of weakness, but I still think it's going to be the owners going at each other that causes the biggest problem.
Yeah, I would go back to what Tim Kurkjian said in our opening segment. And, when I asked him about the popularity of baseball compared to where it was 30 years ago, the last time they had something like this, and it's decreased. Read the room would be my message to the owners and players. You're getting beat by the NFL, sometimes the NBA, sometimes occasionally the NHL. You have a work stoppage and your sport disappears completely from the landscape, where nobody's talking about what's going on the field. It's all about off the field and money that most people can't relate to.
No, exactly. And I think, well, this is the argument, right? I mean, the Dodgers have all of a sudden taken over as the evil empire, but everybody loves Dodger blue, so I got big smiles. But the fact of the matter is, their luxury tax that they're paying is so extreme that almost half the major league teams can't even come close to their luxury tax that they're paying. It's an exorbitant amount. So there is a huge discrepancy. I mean, they've got deferred money for years right now. They found a way to beat the system, and just they don't care about overspending. Now, granted, some of the other teams are getting some of that kickback with the luxury tax proposal. So coming in, the way to kind of, I think, modify it is, can you have a stricter luxury tax? If teams really want to spend that much money and they want to go to like half of what they're paying for their payroll and distribute it out to the league to keep the league supported, well, let's go then. And it seems like the Dodgers are willing to do that. And there's 5 other teams. I mean, the Blue Jays are on that list, the Mets, the Phillies, the Yankees. So there are teams that are willing to support Major League Baseball if that's the way of it. But you better lift that floor up. And I think that's the most important thing, because you want to stop teams from tanking. You do want to have some parity and equal, balance, or at least that's what they're shooting for. But man, oh man, you can't have a hard cap. That's for dang sure.
No. That's not going to work with the Players Association. The last thing I wanted to touch on, Oz, is these war chests. And I don't know if you had them 30 years ago. The owners have been saving money, not that they need to save too much money, but the Players Association, they've been putting away a lot of money for this rainy day fund just in case. Did you have that 30 years ago? And when you compare the two funds, I don't think there is a comparison to the billionaires versus the millionaires.
No, absolutely. So they always put money away. And I think what they've done is the licensing revenue, they've kind of stockpiled that to be able to distribute to the players, if indeed it is an extended strike. And I think money goes into the coffers anyway. And both sides have really kind of saved up. They know this is going to be an incredible legal battle back and forth. And I hope it doesn't get to the point where we've got more money, so we're going to end up winning. Like you said, I hope they just look at the situation and the other leagues and know the importance of keeping this game, because if there's a work stoppage, it is going to be really hard to bring it back. I mean, back then in 94, 95, it took, McGuire and Sosa and the steroid era to bring it back. It took Cal Ripken to bring it back. There are things happening that help Major League Baseball. I don't know if they have that right now, other than a guy like Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I don't think he single-handedly can do that. But the current CBA will expire on midnight, December 1st. And after that, expect a lockout. Hopefully not.
To help explain how much fun I have playing Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, I brought in a ballpark vendor.
Hot dogs, hot dogs.
I love having the chance to win cash or to be selected as a contestant of the game. During that game, I can win $500 for every Orioles home run. So grab the
Popcorn, get your popcorn.
Plus, I can win $5,000 for a grand slam. So when the Orioles are hitting homers, things can get pretty nuts. Make the right call this season and play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery.
Here's something the car insurance companies don't want you to know. If you've been injured in a car accident, the insurance companies are already working against you. They have a team full of agents whose job is to give you as little as possible. That's why you need an experienced lawyer. Science & Kirk has been fighting for accident victims for over 50 years. They know how to handle the insurance companies and know how to get you maximum compensation. Don't go it alone. Remember, you have a lawyer. Call Science & Kirk today or visit youhavealawyer.com.
Shop Maryland's largest adult use and medical cannabis menu, located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week, only at Relief Shop.
Hey Oriole fans, it's Oriole Hall of Famer Mike Bordick here. During my 14 years in the big leagues and over 1,700 games, I put a lot of miles on my body. Listen, I used to judge my days by how I'd walk down the stairs. Now I don't even think about it. I'm almost 60 years old and my legs have never felt better. That's why I trust the Good Feet Arch Supports. They've made a real difference in keeping me active, whether I'm coaching, staying involved in the game that I love, or just enjoying pain-free life here in Baltimore. Thanks to the Good Feet store, I'm still in the game. Visit the Good Feet store today for a free fitting and test walk. Take the first step toward a pain-free life.
Cravings can strike at any time, and Royal Farms is ready to fuel your mornings with fresh brewed coffee, paired with protein-packed breakfast sandwiches and a side of those crispy hash browns. And when the midday hunger hits, bite into a world-famous chicken sub, loaded with flavor and leveled up with a side of Western fries. And when it's time to bring home a crowd pleaser, don't miss out on our world-famous chicken meals. Hand-breaded and a hit with the whole family. Whenever you crave, Royal Farms is ready.
Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time. Looking for a great place to watch the game, bet the races, and get in on the action without heading to the big city? Head to Greenmount OTB in Hampstead, where the action is always on. Watch every game and race on more than 40 big screen TVs while wagering on live horse racing or the big game at the Bet Park Sportsbook. You can bet at the window, at a kiosk, or right from your phone with the Bet Parks mobile app. And grab great food from Greenmount Station, home of Maryland's best crab cakes. Then keep the fun going next door at Greenmount Bowl. Greenmount OTB. Big time action in a hometown setting. 21 and over only. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, shout out to all our sponsors. We really appreciate their support. Go out and patronize our sponsors. We know that someone has reached the law offices of Science and Kirk, so thanks for doing that. Carl Science loves the business, and we love Carl. Until next time, be real, be kind, and make sure to be back for episode 12. It's the Bmore Baseball Podcast. See you next week.